Hello there everyone, it's Carol here from the Crafty Emporium. In the previous video, if you watched it, I showed you how I made this big matchbook folder, mini journal, that I added some tags to. I just want to quickly show you a slightly different version of that today, as well as something else. So I've got my piece of paper here that's 12 inches long and it's 6 inches wide. So what I'm going to do, put it that way around. So I'm going to score it at 1 inch and 6 3/4 inches. And then I'm going to fold and burnish these. So I'm making it in exactly the same way as I did the previous matchbook, but I'm going to do something just slightly different with this one. I've picked out a selection of different papers, so I've got some more of my 6x6 paper pad papers, and I've got some coffee dyed papers, and I've got this vintage ledger sheet. So I'm basically making a mini journal out using these papers inside of this cover. So I need to cut the papers to the size that I want them to be. So I want them to be cut to 5.5 inches wide by 5 3/4 inches deep. I'm going to go off and go and cut these, and I'll come back in a moment and show you what they look like. I've cut all my papers up so that they're 5.5 inches wide and 5 3/4 inches deep, because I want them, when this opens, to be this way on, okay, not that way on. So they need to be this way on. So I'm going to sort these out in the order that I want. Now I've also got these scraps left over as well, so I'm going to include those with it. So I might do one of them and two of them and one of them, and then I might add that and another one of them, maybe 3 of them, and one of them, and I might add one of those in between. There's that set of 3. 1, 2, 3. So I could put a little one in there. Okay. And that one. And 1, 2, 3 again. Okay. Now I want them on there. That's the other one. One in the middle. No, one at the bottom. So I want to try and keep these at the top and at the bottom, because I'm going to be punching some holes in. Put one of you in up there. And then there's a couple of extra that I can actually glue in. I'm just going to clip all these together to keep them all nice and neat. And all in the right place. And then I'm going to pop those in there. Again, I'm just going to clip that in place. Ooh, centralise that, Carol. There we go. So that's now all held in place there, and then that will fold over the top. So yeah, I'm okay with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch 2 holes here and here, and make sure they're right in. And I'm going to use a pen. Oh, I can't reach it. I'm just going to use a pen to mark where I want these holes. Now I don't want them in the centre because I still want to be able to access this fold over here. So if I mark roughly where the centre is and then move it across to the left just a little. So about there. So again on this one, find out where the centre is and move it across just a little. So about there. So I'm still going to catch all these papers, and it's far enough away from this edge that I'll still get a little lip that I can utilise. Now I'm going to do this off camera because it will make the camera jump, but basically all I'm doing is I'm inserting that into there and then moving that down just so that I can see. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that, so that I can just see that where it's going to punch the hole is in the right place with regards to my pen mark. So I'll do that off camera and I'll be back in a second. Now I could take my papers out and put some metal rings on those holes, but I'm just going to use my hole reinforcers that I created in a previous video. So I'm just going to get a little bit of PVA glue, white glue, and whilst it's all still clipped in place, and just reinforce that hole here, here, and also on the back as well. And now I've done that, I can actually get some seam binding. Doesn't have to be seam binding, it could be a satin ribbon, could be a voile ribbon, and I'm going to poke it through that top hole, through to the back, and I'll take that binder clip off in a second, and then poke it through that bottom hole, through to the front. And now I'll take this binder clip off. Now I've got those pages all secure. Pull it through, and then I'm going to tie a knot. I'm actually going to do a double knot, because when you're trying to do it on your own and you've got no one to put your finger on your knot, it can come undone. And then I'm going to make a bow, and then I can trim off the excess. And then I can unclip it. And then go to this page, and this is one that I want to fold back. And I can fold it back on itself again. And then any other extra little bits and pieces, I could stick those in using my micropore. And I've basically got now a little mini journal. So not too many pages in it, but again, ideal for doing for a rack, a random act of kindness, including some happy mail. Great little project for swaps. But yeah, so I've now got all these pages that I can just jot some notes in as I'm watching some of my videos. It's one of the challenges that I've set up on the group, although they don't know it yet, for them to go through and watch some of my older videos and just make some general notes of things that they like, things that they don't like, some ideas that they might not have seen before, because I'm going to be doing a project using that information that they've collated together. You could always decorate the front bit up here. You could put a pocket on the inside here. Obviously it's not something that you can bulk out too much. It is for writing in kind of journal rather than a decorating kind of journal, but it's really nice and quick and simple to make, so I just thought I'd share that with you. I'm going to go on to another project now, again using the 12 by 12 papers, you know, those ugly ones that we don't like, so I came up with another idea for those as well, so I'll see you in a little while. I've showed you this paper before, and it's one of the pads that I purchased, and when I got it I was like, don't like it, and I've shown you in a previous video, which I'll link in the description box down below, of how I went about making it look from that to looking like that, just purely by adding a napkin on top. Because we're sort of, I know we're not through summer yet, but if you like doing a bit of forward planning, I'm going to do an autumn quickie journal using this particular paper. So I'm going to pull it out the pad, and I need to trim off all the excess, so I'll come back in a little while and show you what we're going to do. I've cut my paper down, and I had to actually trim it just fractionally smaller than the 12 by 12, but for all intents and purposes we're going to pretend that it's 12 by 12. Excuse me. Now on the back it's plain white, and I don't want it plain white, and this card isn't particularly thick. Just to give it a little bit of extra strength and support, I've chosen from my Die Cuts with a View heirloom stack, I've chosen this paper here. So I'm actually going to glue this on the back, and then I'm going to stitch it, but I'll show you how I'm going to stitch it. So I'm going to just go away and go and glue this on and trim it all down to size. See you in a second. Okay, so I'm all glued up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my paper that way round. So just bear in mind, if you've got a directional paper that you're putting on the back, you'll need to work out which way around you want your front piece to go, and then obviously put this on the back accordingly. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to score it, and I'm going to score it at 6 inches. I'm scoring it all the way down. I'm then going to turn it round just a quarter turn, and I'm going to score it at 8 inches. So if I flip it over, I'm going to fold it on the 6 inch mark, and just lightly for now, I'm not pressing this down very heavy, and then I'm going to fold it up at the 8 inch mark. So I'm basically forming a pocket on what will be the inside. Now when you do this, if you try and close that up, this all becomes all bunched up and it doesn't meet at the edges, it all ruckles up, it becomes a real nightmare. And so what I'm going to do is just spin it round for a moment, and I'm just going to cut down that centre fold line down to the bottom, down there. Right, so they're now 2 separate pieces. Then I'm going to cut it off at a slight angle. So I'm forming a thin triangle down that side, down to that centre fold. So you can see there how much I've actually cut off. Right, so that's cut off from that bit there. And I'm going to do the same on this side as well. So just cut a small triangle off. I'll just spin it back round. So now it eases the pressure on these pockets now for when it's going to close. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to round these corners off. So I'll draw around, pen, there we go, pen. So I'm just going to draw around this bottle to give me a bit of a guide to be able to cut that out. And it just gives me a slightly neater finish to it. Okay, do the same on this side. Now I can ink up the edges of these, and I need to be careful when I'm inking because this is the serviette here. If I ink this way, I'm going to lift the serviette off, so I'm going to push it away. The next step is I'm going to glue these pockets in place by gluing down this edge down here, and I'm just using my Tombow glue. I'll just put a thin line of glue down there, and the same on this side. And just hold that until that glue's taken. Continuing on, I've now inked up all the edges and I've stitched all the way around all four sides with a zigzag stitch. I'm now going to add some seam binding for the closure, and I've already pre-dyed this up in autumnal colours. So what I'm going to do is wrap it around like this so it's double, and just make sure that it's nice and even in length here, which it now is. And then I'm going to flip that back, and I'm just going to put a line, a small line of Glossy Accents glue just there, and put that one on top. And then that glue should soak through. Nope, not going to do it today because it's like, no, you're filming. We're not going to do it. So I'm going to put another line on top of that. And put this one on top of there. So they're sat on top of each other. There we go. Alright, it's seeping through now, look. There we go. Alright, now I've already prepared a picture. And what I've done is, this was some of the greaseproof paper that I dye my coffee on in the oven. It's really brittle, so you only have to touch it and it all falls apart, but I did like the effect of it, and I've stitched those two together. Now because my stitching was so small, I've actually had to put a layer of Glossy Accents over the top of the stitching, because otherwise this just ends up falling away. It just ends up almost like perforating the greaseproof paper. So I'm going to put some more Glossy Accents on top of that. And then I'll sit that on top of there. And I've also picked out some toadstools. I'm kind of contemplating putting a couple of toadstools on there as well. I'll have a little think about that. I'm not sure about those. Might just leave it as it is. Now for the inside, what I've done on the inside here, or what I'm going to do, is I've chosen two images that I'm going to stick on here as pockets. So I've already inked those up, and I'm just going to put glue on two sides, on the two straight sides. So a line of glue there and there. And then that can sit in that corner. And that can now act as a tuck spot on there. My idea for this project, because it's become so expensive at the moment to post anything abroad or even at home sometimes, is that I thought that if we start making journals and do a swap on group to send journals, they can end up being really quite expensive. And so what I thought was I would fill this with pieces of ephemera and send this out as the autumn journal swap, and then the recipient of it can then add their own coffee dyed papers in the centre to form the signature, and then they can use the ephemera that's stored in the pockets to be able to then decorate the pages up. Now obviously it will only take a single signature, so it'll only take a few pages, but I've sorted out some ephemera that I'm going to put in mine. So I filled a glassine bag up for both sides with some papers, decorative papers. I've made 2 large tags that can also go in there as well, so they could be used in the journal. And then I've cut out some journaling cards and booklets to go in each side, and then the same on the other side, some slightly different ones, so they can go in there. And then that can then be closed up, tied up, and that could be the autumn journal swap. Now look how thin that is. That is going to be much cheaper to send, and the recipient can also have great fun in creating their own journal with all the extra bits and pieces that are inside of there, and pair them up with some of their own products as well. So that's my little project for the using up some ugly 12 by 12 papers. Now you wouldn't know, would you, now looking at that that was an ugly paper to begin with. So I think that's turned out quite nice. And then I can tie this up, add a bow. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Just need to chop that bit so that, and I think that would make a nice swap item to send out via the group. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the 2 projects. I've actually decorated up the other project as well that I showed earlier on in the video. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you all again really soon. Bye for now.